be the Lord of all mankind. Your Excellency, Ambassador Albert Korev from the Russian Federation. At the outset, I must thank Russian Federation, Russia, that last night at the United Nations Security Council, it was Russia's very principled position along with China on the issue of Palestine. And I think the fact that the resolution now includes a reference that it will be a pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood owes in large measure to the positive and proactive role of Russia, for which we thank you, Excellency. Chairman of the Institute, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Director General Suhail Mahmood Saab, and I also want to wish Ambassador Suhail Mahmood Saab good luck for the future, because from 1st of January 2026 he will be taking over as Secretary General of the D8 organization in Istanbul. And I'm sure his expertise, his brilliance, his proactive role in diplomacy as a person who is really a globalist with roots in the global south will make a qualitative difference in the D8 conference, D8 organization, of which I had the honor and pleasure to be participating in their first summit in Istanbul in 1997 as Minister for Information, Culture and Tourism. So I hope to see him again. Dr. Neelam Mubarak on the very good book you're producing, and also Dr. Rasul Batraisa, my old colleague in the Punjab University. We got thrown out together for our ideas 40 years ago, and I'm glad to see that he is still very clear in his strategic clarity, because we both used to visit the People's Publishing House in Lahore of Mr. Rauf Malik and read the Tulu magazine, not just Tulu, which is published by the Soviet Cultural Center in Karachi, but also New Times and Moscow News. There was a weekly New Times and also Moscow News. So, and ambassadors from Belarus is there and other friends. And also I'd like to mention Dr. Ashfaq Hasan Khan. He's the leading expert on Russia also. And recently he has been put as a member of the Experts Council representing Asia in the International Movement for the Freedom of Nations. Congratulations to you, sir, on that. And also I would like to mention Chaudhry Qamar Zaman Saab is also a distinguished personality. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all I would like to start by mentioning that this publication of this important volume coincides with this historic year, which is the 80th anniversary of the victory over fascism, in which the Red Army of the Soviet Union played a pivotal role. And that made the world safer and better, free from the scourge of Nazism, of extremism, and of fascism. So, and the Russian people made the maximum sacrifices. I think about 27 million people are martyred in this historic conflict, where Marshal Stalin, Marshal Yukov, and other leaders played a very key role. So congratulations to you on for that, this anniversary. And this book is now going to be a very authoritative document in the world. And I would also like to greet our friends in Moscow, especially our friend Belagrinsky, who is Professor Belagrinsky, and my older friend Rina Sarenko, who are there. And also Kazi Saab, I've seen your photograph with President Putin. It's truly historic, and you gave a very good insight into that. And Professor Belagrinsky's book is in Russian, but we look forward to seeing it in English also. He started with some historical context, and I think that historical context I just want to very briefly remind, because we often forget that. In 1944, the Communist Party of India was the only other political party in the South Asian subcontinent, apart from the All India Muslim League, which supported the demand for Pakistan, the right of self-determination of the Muslims of South Asia. And it was as a consequence, when Pakistan came into being, the Soviet Union, at that time, Marshal Stalin was the leader, had a positive view towards Pakistan. And the first invitation to Prime Minister Liaqat to visit a foreign country came on 2nd of May 1949 from the Soviet Union. Of course, history is fortune has changed because that was, I think, June 2nd, 1949, the invitation came. And Mr. Liaqat Khan chose not to go to the Soviet Union, but he went to the United States in May 1950. That is very clear. So historically, we should be very clear that the Soviet Union had a friendly attitude towards Pakistan. In fact, perhaps even more friendlier than India, because Mr. Nehru had sent his sister, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, as ambassador to Moscow, and she was never received by Stalin. Then on 23rd of December 1952, at the UN Security Council, the Soviet delegate supported the right of self-determination of the people of Kashmir. 23rd December 1952, Soviet Union says that the fate of Kashmir should be left to the people to decide. This is very clear. And I would also like to mention that when Deputy Prime Minister Mikoyan came to Pakistan for the Republic Day celebrations, the Soviet Union offered in 1956 to establish a steel mill. Dr. Rasul Baksh Rais mentioned the steel mill. This was first offered to Pakistan with a 2 million tons capacity in 1956, which was the capacity given to India in the Bhilai steel mill. So the initial attitude was there, but once Pakistan joined the Western camp and alliances, then of course, and then there was a brief period of honeymoon under Field Marshal Ayub Khan from 65 to 69. Field Marshal Ayub Khan went to Moscow in April 1965, very good visit, and then followed by visits of Prime Minister Kosygin to Pakistan, Kashmir Declaration. Prime Minister Kosygin came to Pakistan in 1968 and also in 1969. And Marshal Grechko came in 1968, a defense minister, and the first arms agreement was signed between Pakistan and the Soviet Union. So that period lasted till 69, and then the situation changed. So overall, Pakistan and Soviet Union and this. The reason I'm focusing on that is because I also did my own research when I was editor of the Muslim, and I produced a document called Pakistan-Soviet Relations, which is from 1947 to 1980s, I think. It was the Soviet Union period. I've analyzed that. It came in a series of articles, about 4 parts in the Muslim newspaper, based on my own original research. And I focused a lot because I thought that this is an important relationship. And that was when I first discovered the Soviet Union by physically visiting it. I was the first Pakistani journalist to go there after the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan in 1985. They invited me, and I visited there. And I visited not just the Soviet Union, the Russian side, I mean, Leningrad, Moscow, but also the Central Asian Republic. And at that time, and so it was quite a useful visit. And at that time, I went to the Institute of Oriental Studies, where Professor Belagrinsky is there, and Professor Irina Serenko are there, and Mikhail Kapitsa, the former Soviet ambassador to Pakistan, was the director. A very impressive person, very good, and we hosted him for lunch, and we had a very long chat, and he talked about his days in Karachi as ambassador. He was there in the 60s. And then I went again in 1988, Soviet Union. I was also guest of a very famous personality of the Russian Federation, Evgeny Primakov. He was head of the Institute of Oriental Studies. He spoke Arabic, and he had been foreign correspondent of Pravda in Cairo. And in fact, later on, then when there were this war taking place in Gulf, he was the special envoy of Russia to talk to Saddam Hussein. So, and I think his son, you have a photograph also visiting. His son is also a member of parliament, I believe. And I traveled with Mr. Kremakov from Moscow to Vladivostok at that time, 1988, to meet Evert Shevardnadze, because Vladivostok was the easternmost part of the Soviet Union of Russia, and they were opening up for the first time after World War II. And it was the time of Mr. Gorbachev. So that was quite a unique experience we have had. And recently, in fact, yesterday I came back again from Russia, this time Sochi. And Sochi is on the Black Sea coast,
And it's a beautiful resort, and there was a meeting of the International Movement for the Freedom of Nations, and I'm a member of the standing committee, and it is presided over by Mr. Dmitry Medvedev, who is the deputy chairman of the National Security Council, but also the former president and prime minister of Russia, as well as the head of the United Russia ruling party. And Almaz Sahab, you are the expert, you have lived in Moscow for 2 years? Over years, and you just come back as a scholar. So I found that the last year also I went to Vladivostok, I went to Perm, I went to St. Petersburg and Moscow. I found tremendous goodwill for Pakistan. And I feel that Russia is playing a very positive role in international affairs. And Ambassador Farid mentioned about the initiatives of President Putin. I feel that those are very positive and good initiatives. Eurasian security, which was first issued in June 2024, and we welcome that because it makes security indivisible, it's more inclusive, it talks of Eurasian security in the broader context, and this is a new world emerging. And also Mr. Putin made a very important speech last year in November at the Waldai Club meeting in November. And he said that a new world order is emerging, and that new world order would be more inclusive and more representative of the world's majority, which means the global south. And in this regard, I would feel that what he has said is absolutely correct, because when we look at the big picture, we see certain very clear trends. There was a recent statement of Madame Ursula von der Leyen from the European Union Commission. She gave an interview to the German newspaper Die Zeit, and she mentioned, and I would like to quote from that interview, she said, "The West as we know it has now ceased to exist." This is her statement. And Mr. Macron has also mentioned that 300 years of Western hegemony is now coming to an end. So what we are seeing is a shift in the global balance of economic and political power away from the West to the East or to the global South. Global South includes Asia, Africa, Latin America, and it includes Belarus, by the way. You are part of SCO also, and you are also playing a very positive role. So that, I think, is one very clear trend that is, I would say, irreversible. That the decline of the West as we know it, because even the role of NATO has been very negative. I think in fomenting conflict in Europe, trying to have a new Cold War, treating Russia as an enemy, treating China as an enemy, when there's no need for enemies, neither of them, they're both peaceful countries. And I think that this mindset of the Cold War has to end, whether it's in Europe or in Asia. And so in this context, there is a huge opportunity for the expansion, for the broadening, for the strengthening of Pakistan-Russia relations. Because there is no fundamental conflict of interest between Islamabad and Moscow today on any issue. There's in fact a broad convergence. Today our Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister is in Moscow for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. We have also been interested in BRICS also. And the vision that has been given by President Putin, by Russia, has been one that Pakistan also sees, the emergence of a new world which is not based on the so-called rules-based international order. Because that so-called rules-based international order has been buried in the debris of Gaza by Western double standards and Western duplicity and hypocrisy, especially on the issue of Palestine. Because when they talk of human rights, it's all based on a lot of double standards. And in this regard, I feel that Pakistan and Russia, especially the opportunities are there in the field of education, in the field of energy, in the field of culture. And in fact, we have been talking here also that we need a dedicated platform to promote that. Something like a Eurasian Activity Forum that should strengthen that. Eurasia includes Russia, China, Central Asia, Iran, Turkey, Belarus, other countries. And I think this is a need of the hour, that there should be some kind of a Eurasian connectivity forum in Pakistan that should bring these countries together for this new world that is opening up in our part of the world, and which is going to be one of the principal props of the emerging global order.